Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, please hit that sub button and join the family. Smash that like button if you enjoyed today's stories. She had this vibe, this aura, like she was living in a completely different world, one cooler, more colorful, more cinematic than mine. She said she was studying abroad in a city I'd never even heard of. Every message from her came with a little window into that world. Pictures of cozy cafes with handwritten menus in languages I couldn't read, cobblestone streets that glowed in the golden hour, tiny bookstores tucked into alleyways that looked straight out of a movie. It felt exotic, mysterious, like something you find in a curated travel blog or one of those Instagram accounts that always somehow captures the perfect angle of a latte next to an old hardcover book. I was hooked, honestly. I'd never met someone like her, or at least I didn't think I had. She felt like she belonged to some world I didn't even know existed, a world I wanted to peek into, if only through her stories. We started talking more. Daily messages turned into long conversations, and soon her photos were filling up my feed. There were pictures of her sitting on stone steps outside some historic building, eating something she called a local delicacy, even though it looked more like a dare than a dish. She told me about festivals with fireworks that lit up the sky over ancient rooftops, language classes with eccentric professors, and weekend train trips to neighboring countries. It was the kind of life people dream about but never actually live. Her stories were rich in detail, too rich maybe, but I didn't question it at first. I wanted it all to be real. I wanted her to be real. The mystery wasn't just part of her appeal, it was the appeal. And who was I to poke holes in something that made me feel like my boring life had a portal to something bigger? But over time, little things didn't add up. The street names she mentioned didn't match up when I looked them up. Some of the cafes she described turned out to be stock photos from travel websites. I noticed the same photo on a blog when I was randomly reading about European cities one night. Still, I brushed it off. Maybe she just didn't want to reveal exactly where she was, or maybe I was being too suspicious. Maybe she just borrowed pictures because her phone camera sucked. Or maybe she wanted to keep a little mystery going. That was part of the charm, right? Months passed. The conversations got deeper, and so did my feelings. I started imagining what it would be like to meet her, to actually see her in person. She said she'd be coming back home for a short visit, and I took that as a sign. This was it. We'd finally get to hang out in real life. I was nervous, of course, which wasn't what I expected. But even with those doubts, I told myself that meeting her would make everything real. The day finally came. I drove out to pick her up from this little town that, weirdly enough, she never mentioned living in before. As I waited in the car, I felt this strange heaviness in my chest. Anticipation, maybe. But when she stepped out and walked toward me, something inside me twisted. She looked familiar. Too familiar. Not like the person from the photos, but like someone I should recognize from way back. Someone ordinary. There was no confident stride, no accent, no glow of someone who just stepped off a plane from Europe. Just small towner. Quiet. Nervous. Real, but not in the way I'd hoped. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. She wasn't studying abroad. She hadn't left her small hometown in years. The places she talked about, the food she described, the stories she spun, they weren't hers. The photos were lifted from travel blogs and Instagram influencers. Her whole online persona was built on borrowed pieces of someone else's life. I felt gut punched. It wasn't just disappointment, it was betrayal. I'd fallen for someone who didn't exist. I confronted her, my voice shaky with a mix of anger and sadness. She didn't fight back. She didn't even try to defend herself. Instead, she broke down. She cried and begged me not to tell anyone. She said if people found out, she'd lose everything, not me, but the new friends she'd made online. The people who only knew the version of her she'd created. That hit harder than I expected. It wasn't about me. It never really had been. She built this fantasy not for love, but for escape. Her real life was small, gray, and confining, and she needed an outlet. So she created this alternate version of herself. Someone worldly, interesting, mysterious. Someone people paid attention to. The truth is, I didn't walk away angry. I walked away shaken. Because I started asking myself questions I didn't like the answers to. How many other people out there are doing the same thing, living stories that aren't theirs, fabricating versions of themselves just to feel seen? How desperate do you have to be to lie about your entire life, not for money or fame, but just for connection. She wasn't malicious. She wasn't a scammer. She was just lost, hiding behind a mask that had started to feel more real than her own face. And that's what stayed with me. Not the lies, not the photos, not even the fake city names. What stayed with me was the look in her eyes when the truth was out, the way she clutched that fantasy like it was the only thing keeping her afloat. Meeting her wasn't the start of something new like I'd hoped. It was more like the end of a strange chapter, a twisted reminder of how fragile our realities can be, especially online. I didn't hate her. I couldn't. What she did was wrong, yeah, but it came from a place of pain, not cruelty. I think about her sometimes. I wonder if she's still pretending, still posting pictures of places she's never been. Or if, maybe, she found a way to live a life she doesn't have to lie about. Either way, I don't know how easy it is to fall for a story, and how hard it is to untangle a person from the version of themselves they wish they were. So, yeah, that's how I learned that sometimes the coolest stories aren't real at all. And the person behind the screen might be fighting battles you can't see, wrapped in a mask so tight, they forget there's someone real underneath. What started as a digital crush turned into a collision with truth, and a hard lesson about the lies we tell when we're afraid of being ordinary. I met her online, and for months, everything felt like it was clicking. We talked all the time. Late nights filled with random memes, deep conversations, even silly stuff no one else really cared about. She always seemed so real, like someone I could actually meet one day and just hang out with. I'd never been that close to anyone online before, so it was kind of wild how fast it felt normal, like she was a part of my daily routine. But that day, the one where we finally meet, it never came. Every time I brought it up, she had a reason why she couldn't yet. She'd say she was nervous, or family stuff had come up, or sometimes she'd just be super busy. At first, I thought it was fine. People open up at their own pace, right? Sometimes you just need more time. But after a while, that more time started to feel like something else. It got weird. Like she was hiding something, or maybe avoiding me. It was this strange mix of wanting to believe her and feeling like there was this giant wall I couldn't get past. She never let me see anything real outside of our chats. No video calls, no voice messages, nothing that could prove she was the same person behind the screen. Sometimes I'd ask for proof, just a quick video, a selfie with something I'd pick out, but she always had an excuse. My phone's broken. My internet is spotty. I'm not comfortable with that yet. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe she was just shy or had reasons I didn't get. Then one day she dropped this curveball. She asked if I'd be okay meeting her mom first. At first I thought that's kind of unusual, but also sweet. Like maybe she wanted her family to know who she was talking to, like it was serious or real. I agree without much thought. I figured meeting her mom could be a way to get closer to her, a stepping stone to meeting her for real. What could go wrong? We set up a time and a place. I was nervous but kind of excited, imagining what her mom might be like. Maybe a warm woman with stories to tell, someone who would like me or at least be curious. But when I showed up, the whole thing went sideways immediately. Instead of a normal mom, the person waiting on the couch looked off. She was wearing a wig, dark hair that didn't match her face at all, and a bunch of makeup that made her look older but in a weird, unnatural way. At first, I thought maybe this was just her mom's style, or maybe she was trying to look younger, or even that the wig was just a bad hair day situation. But something about the way this wind moved, the way she talked, hit me like a punch in the gut. It wasn't her mom. It was her. The same girl I'd been talking to online, but now dressed up to play the role of her own mom. I froze. My brain was scrambling to figure out what was happening. Was this some twisted joke? Was she messing with me, testing how far I'd go? But the look in her eyes wasn't playful. It was serious, intense, like she was desperate to keep me there in that moment. She kept up the act for a little while, talking like she was someone else, but it all felt wrong, like she was trying to trap me in this strange fantasy she made up. I wanted out. I told her maybe this wasn't working, that I didn't feel comfortable with this whole setup. But that's when everything changed. The friendly, chill girl I'd known disappeared, and something else took over. Her voice got sharper, colder, and the fake smile slipped away. Suddenly, she was aggressive, pushing me to stay and listen, accusing me of not trusting her or not wanting to be part of her life. She acted like I was the one causing problems, like I was breaking some unspoken rule by doubting her. That sweet person behind the screen was gone, replaced by this controlling, desperate version of herself that was way more frightening than anything I'd expected. That whole thing wasn't about family or trust. It was a game she was playing, A twisted, dangerous game where I was just a pawn she needed to keep close, confused, and stuck. Meeting her mom was never about introducing me to her family. It was about blurring the lines between real and fake, keeping me tangled up in her lies so I wouldn't walk away easily. It was confusing, exhausting, and honestly terrifying. After that day, I couldn't stop thinking about how far she was willing to go to keep me hooked. How much time she must have spent planning it, making up this weird charade just so she could hold on to control. The way she blurred those lines, acting like two different people just to mess with my head. It was like a horror story come to life, but in real time. I kept replaying it, wondering what made her do it, what made her want to trap someone like that. We never talked again after that. I blocked her on everything, but even now, thinking about it makes my skin crawl. It's not just about being catfished anymore. It's about realizing how twisted someone can get when they're desperate to keep control, no matter what it takes. She wasn't just pretending to be someone else online. She was willing to step into multiple roles, lie, manipulate, and push people around to keep her fantasy alive. It freaked me out to think about how many others are out there like her. People who aren't just lying about who they are, but who use those lies to control others in ways that make it almost impossible to break free. I thought online dating was supposed to be fun or at least normal, but this was something else. It was like stepping into a nightmare where nothing is what it seems, and the person you think you know could be playing you the whole time. Looking back, I don't think I ever really knew her. Not the real her, at least. What I had was just a mask, a twisted act that she was desperate to keep alive. And even though I walked away, the whole thing still messes with my head sometimes. Because the truth is, what she did was way beyond just a lie. It was like she wanted to own a piece of me, keep me stuck in her world where she was in control, no matter how scary or messed up that was. So yeah, that's how it went down. Meeting her mom wasn't a meetup at all. It was a trap. And once you're in it, it's hard to know what's real and what's just another part of the act. I thought I'd seen everything online. People pretending, hiding behind screens, catfishing, all that. But then I stumbled onto her, and it was on a whole different level. At first, she seemed pretty normal. Just another girl scrolling through dating apps trying to find someone to connect with. But there was this vibe that something wasn't quite right. Like you ever meet someone and it feels like they're not really one person. Like they're flipping through characters like it's a costume party. That was her, except way crazier. She had at least 5 different profiles across different apps and sites, and each one was totally different. I'm talking about completely different personalities and looks. One was this ultra sporty, slim girl, always posting sweaty gym selfies, hiking trails, pictures of protein shakes. She looked fit and healthy, like someone who lived outside and didn't touch her phone much. Then there was the artsy one, all black and white photos with those intense, moody vibes. Deep quotes about loneliness and creativity, some kind of pretentious stuff, but you could tell she wanted people to see her as mysterious and cool. Then came the party girl profile. She was loud and colorful, posting selfies from every bar and concert, smiling with friends, shots of cocktails and neon lights. You'd think this girl never slept and was the life of the party. Then shockingly, there was a quiet, bookish version. Glasses, messy hair, shelves filled with novels behind her. The kind of girl who posted quotes from classic literature and pictures of rainy days spent inside cafes with coffee. I swear, each profile was so convincing it was nuts, like she put actual effort into creating these lives. I first got suspicious when I started matching with more than one of these profiles. At first, I figured it was just some weird coincidence. Different names, but similar enough to think it might be the same person. Then, I accidentally caught a glimpse of messages between the profiles. I'm not even kidding. One profile was texting another, like the artsy one was sliding into the party girl's DMs. The messages were a weird mix of friendly, flirty, jealous, and downright aggressive sometimes. It was like watching the secret soap opera unfold. She was juggling all these conversations, playing every role like a pro. At first, I thought it was funny. Like, who does that? But then it got way darker. One profile started obsessively stalking another. The artsy girl, who was always talking about being misunderstood, started accusing the sporty one of stealing followers, taking her spotlight, and being a fake, like it was her own fake self going after her other fake self. The messages went from passive-aggressive to downright scary. I saw screenshots where she posted pictures of the sporty girl's real friends, places she supposedly went, even times and locations that only someone close would know. That was the moment when the whole thing stopped being some weird online game and turned into a nightmare. I was watching someone lose control in real time, someone so tangled in their own web of lies they started turning against themselves. The stalking spilled over into real life. At least it seemed that way. There were comments and posts that hinted she was showing up at places a sporty profile would be, sending cryptic messages to people pretending to be one of her other versions. It was like watching a train wreck happen on a screen you couldn't look away from. You think you know someone online, but then you realize they're living in a twisted reality where the fake parts of themselves fight for dominance. She wasn't just playing people for attention anymore. She was battling with her own identities, and none of them were winning. It was messy, creepy, and more than a little sad. At one point, I even saw the artsy profile begging the quiet one for help. It was like she wanted to stop but didn't know how. The messages were desperate, asking for a way out, asking for understanding, begging not to be abandoned. It was haunting because it felt like two sides of a broken person reaching out to each other, trapped inside the same mind. I thought about trying to reach out, but how? Who do you talk to when you don't even know which of the profiles is real, or if any of them are? That whole experience made me feel sick, not just because of the lying, but because it showed how desperate someone could get for attention, for identity, for just feeling like they exist. It wasn't just catfishing other people. It was like she was catfishing herself, trying to be 1,000 different people at once and failing at all of them. It made me wonder how long she'd been doing it and how much of her was left underneath all those layers. Eventually, I blocked all the accounts. I didn't want to get sucked back into that mess. But every once in a while, I catch myself thinking about her. It's this weird, unsettling feeling like I glimpsed something broken and lost. Someone who was living 1,000 lives online, but none of them were really hers. And that's the worst part. The not knowing what happened next. Did the stalking get worse? Did she have some kind of breakdown? Or did she just create more profiles, start the whole cycle again with new faces and new stories? I'll never know. And honestly, that's what sticks with me the most. This wasn't just some random catfish story. It was a digital nightmare where reality and fiction blended so much it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. And somewhere in there, the person behind it all got lost, caught in a maze of their own making. I never thought I'd get caught up in something like this, but Ben was different at first. When we started talking, he seemed like the kind of guy who really wanted to connect. Like he always wanted proof that I was actually real. Selfies, videos, screenshots, you name it. He'd ask for all this stuff, like it wasn't enough to just talk or get to know each other through messages. It felt kind of intense, honestly, but I thought maybe that was just how he was wired. Someone who needed to see the person on the other side to believe they were real. So I didn't think much of it. But what threw me off was that while he constantly asked for proof, he never sent me anything in return. Not a single photo or video, not even a voice message. Every time I asked him to send something back, he always had an excuse. First, it was his camera. He said it was broken or the lighting was terrible, so the pictures came out blurry. Then, when I tried to help him with apps or suggest other ways to share photos, he claimed the pictures looked fake or edited, and that he didn't want me to think he was trying to trick me. It was frustrating. Like, why ask so much if you're not going to show anything yourself? But I wanted to believe in him. You know how it is when you start liking someone. Even if things feel a little off, your brain just tries to fill in the blanks and find reasons to keep going. So I kept sending photos and little videos. Sometimes they were dumb and silly, like me goofing off or showing my messy room. Other times, they were more personal, like me sharing something that felt private or vulnerable. I thought that meant something, but Ben was always suspicious. He'd question if the photos were real or accuse me of editing them. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying to prove myself constantly, but never getting anything back. After a few months of this back and forth, the messages started to shift. Suddenly, Ben told me he was stuck somewhere far away, abroad in a place I'd never heard of, and couldn't get back home because of some emergency. At first, I wanted to believe him. The story sounded plausible enough. I pictured him stranded, stressed, and alone. I felt bad for him, even though I'd never met him in person. It felt weird to care, but I did. Then the requests came. It started small, a little money to cover a hotel night or some urgent fee. He said it was only temporary and he'd pay me back as soon as he got home. I wanted to help, so I sent a bit of cash. But then the money requests kept coming. Every week there was some new crisis: lost wallet, emergency medical bill, a fee to get his phone unlocked, or something else urgent. It wasn't just a one-time thing anymore. It was like he was counting on me to bail him out every time. The worst part was that he never offered anything in return. No photos, no real talk, no plans to meet up or call. Just more excuses and urgent demands. The whole thing started to feel like a trap, but I was already too tangled in it to see clearly. My gut kept screaming something was wrong, but I kept pushing it down because I wanted to believe in him, wanted to trust him. The fact that he never shared anything real made more sense in hindsight. He was hiding behind this made-up story because he didn't want me to see the truth. It hit me like a punch when I finally put the pieces together. Ben was catfishing me the whole time, not just hiding behind a fake story, but manipulating my trust to get money. Every excuse, every crisis was just a way to keep me hooked and sending cash. I wasn't just someone he talked to. I was his way of surviving, his endless ATM that he could drain without ever revealing who he really was. Trying to get out was harder than I thought. When I stopped sending money and started pulling away, Ben flipped. His messages changed tone. He went from sad and helpless to angry and manipulative. Suddenly, I was the bad guy for not trusting him, for abandoning him when he needed me most. He'd say things that made me feel guilty, like I was a terrible person for leaving someone in crisis, even though the whole thing was a lie. It was scary how fast he switched, like he was trying to trap me in this cycle of guilt and fear so I wouldn't walk away. I remember one message where he said I was the only person who'd ever cared about him, and if I left, he didn't know what he'd do. I felt frozen like I couldn't breathe. That was the moment I realized I had to cut ties completely, no matter how hard it was. The guilt was real, but I couldn't let it control me anymore. Looking back, I can't believe I didn't see it sooner. I kept making excuses, telling myself that maybe he was just shy or that the camera really was broken. Maybe the emergencies were real at first, but the way he never let me get close, never showed anything real, was a huge red flag I ignored. I think when you like someone, your brain does these weird things, blinds you to the obvious. It's like you wanted to leave so badly you don't notice the cracks until the whole thing falls apart. The whole thing left me feeling used and drained, not just money-wise, but emotionally too. It was like I'd been in a relationship with a ghost, giving pieces of myself to someone who wasn't really there. And the worst part, I have no idea who Ben actually is or was. The person behind the screen could be anyone, hiding in the shadows, playing the same game with other people, waiting for the next chance to pull someone in. Sometimes I wonder how many others are out there caught in the same trap, sending photos, sharing parts of their lives, and sending money, hoping the person on the other side is real. It's a twisted cycle, and once you're in, it's hard to get out without feeling like you've lost something important. So yeah, that's my story. Not your usual catfish tale of the simple, he was fake, ending. It's darker than that. It's about trust twisted into control, about lies so deep they trap you in guilt and fear, and about the way someone can use your kindness against you while hiding behind an endless wall of excuses. Ben wasn't real, but the pain he caused definitely was. You know when someone online seems way too cool to be real. That's exactly how George started. He was that kind of guy who knew how to talk about music like it was his whole world, throwing around stories about gigs, late night studio sessions, and all that band life drama. His photos were all slick, like professional studio shots or pictures from live shows that made him look like some underground rock star. I was hooked, honestly. It wasn't just about the music. It was the vibe he gave off, like he was this mysterious creative dude living a life way different from mine. We started chatting casually, and quickly those conversations became something I looked forward to. He had this way of pulling me into his world, talking about the grind of trying to make it in the music scene, the constant struggle with bandmates who didn't always show up, the drama of canceled gigs, and the tension of chasing studio time that never seemed to come cheap. Every message felt like a glimpse behind the curtain of a lifestyle I only knew from movies and documentaries. He painted a picture that was raw and real, full of passion and frustration, and I found myself caring about his ups and downs like they were my own. What really got me was how genuine it all seemed. Not just the music stuff, but the way he talked about his dreams, his fears, and even the small, quiet moments when he felt alone or unsure. It was the kind of vulnerability that made me feel like I wasn't just talking to some random person online. I was talking to someone real, someone I could connect with deeply. And for a while, I did. I started to imagine meeting him, hearing his guitar live, maybe even going to one of his shows someday. It felt like a secret world I was invited into. But the thing is, George was always dodging the real world stuff. When I asked to meet up, there was always some excuse. One time it was last minute bills he had to pay. Another time, some emergency with the band that couldn't be postponed. It wasn't just once or twice. It was every time I tried to suggest we meet. It felt weird, but I told myself that being in a band was messy, crazy schedules, unreliable bandmates, gigs all over the place. I didn't want to push too hard and risk losing what we had, so I let it slide. Then, one night, curiosity got the better of me. I started getting suspicious about those photos he sent. They were too perfect, too polished, like something out of a magazine. So I ran a reverse image search on a few of them just to see if they were real or maybe stolen from somewhere. And that's when everything came crashing down. None of those studio pics or gig shots were actually him. They were stock photos or images pulled from other people's online pages. The same pictures appeared on random music blogs or photographers' portfolios. It was like someone had taken these perfect snapshots and just pasted them into a fake story. It hit me like a slap. This whole band story was a lie. But why? Why build such an elaborate world if it wasn't real? I felt confused and a little betrayed, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe there was some explanation. So I brought it up with George, asking about the photos. I waited for his response, expecting some kind of honest answer. Instead, the vibe completely shifted. Gone were the long stories about music or the funny band mishaps. There was silence for days, then some half-hearted excuses about how those photos were just for fun, or that the band stuff was more of a dream than reality. But that didn't sit right with me. It was like he was trying to backtrack and cover something up. Curiosity turned into something darker as I started digging deeper. I didn't want to believe the worst, but the more I looked, the more I found out. George wasn't living that rock star life at all. He was living with his parents, no gigs, no band, no music career anywhere near what he described. And worse, I found messages from other girls online who said he'd been asking them for money, emergency bills, car repairs, studio gear, all the typical, "can you help me out?" lines you hear in scams. It felt like a trap. I'd been talking to this perfect, exciting persona, but behind it was someone just scraping by, depending on lies and borrowing money from people who thought they were helping someone chasing a dream. It wasn't just disappointing. It was disturbing how easily he'd woven this fake life and made people believe it. The whole thing was built on deception, and it was part of it. Meeting him. That never happened, obviously. He always had an excuse ready, and I get now why there was nothing real to show up for. I kept thinking about how online stories can be so damn convincing that you don't even realize you're part of someone else's game until you're way too deep. What messes with me most isn't just that George was fake or that he lied. It's how he made me feel for months, like I was sharing something real with someone who didn't exist, investing emotions into a show. It's a strange kind of grief when you realize the person you thought you knew was just a collection of stolen images and invented drama. Sometimes I wonder what drives people to do that. Why build such a complicated lie? Was George lonely? Was he trying to escape a life he hated? Or was it just a game, a way to get something out of others? Maybe all of it. I'll never know for sure. That whole George story still messes with me. Not because I lost money or anything huge, but because it showed me how some people can lie so fake that when you finally see the truth, it's like the ground drops out from under you. The perfect band guy was just a shadow behind a screen, and the real person was hiding behind lies, waiting for the next mark to come along. Now, I'm more careful about who I trust online. I still love music and connecting with people, but I'm wary of anyone who seems just a little too perfect, a little too good to be true. Because sometimes that's exactly what they are, a beautiful illusion designed to keep you hooked until it's too late to step away. I remember the first time I saw Stacy's profile. It looked like the kind of profile you double tap without even thinking. Cute photos, good lighting, casual poses that made her seem like someone who just chilled and had her life together. Nothing flashy or overdone, just a vibe that pulled me in. It felt effortless, the kind of online presence that makes you think, she's real grounded, someone you could actually talk to. So naturally, I started talking to her. And at first, things felt easy, like chatting with an old friend. She had stories about her life, little things about her friends, weekend plans, favorite spots around town. It wasn't dramatic or outlandish, just simple, everyday stuff that made her feel real. You know, the kind of mundane details that actually make a person feel alive. We talked for a while, and I started to feel like I knew her. That casual, comfortable connection where you don't need to impress or filter too much. Stacy shared little moments, a funny text from her best friend, a family dinner she'd cooked, even a weird trip to the beach with some inside jokes thrown in. All those small details build a picture of someone who is just living her life, with its ups and downs, normal and imperfect. Then one day, something clicked. I saw a post on my friend's Instagram, the same friend I'd mentioned a few times in conversation, and my stomach dropped. The photos on Stacy's profile, they were exactly the same, not just one or two, but every single one. Same angles, same lighting, even the same filters. It wasn't just a case of similar photos, it was like she'd stolen my friend's entire Instagram feed and reposted it as her own. I kept scrolling through Stacy's stories, trying to figure out if maybe it was some weird coincidence or a glitch. But then I noticed something way worse. The stories she told online, all those little details about family dinners, the beach trip, those inside jokes, they matched exactly what my friend had shared with me over the years. It wasn't just the picture she was copying, it was the life, the memories, the whole narrative. At first, I thought maybe my friend had shared her account with Stacy, or maybe there was some kind of mix-up. But after talking to my friend, I found out she had no idea anything like this was happening. She'd never even heard of Stacy. That's when it hit me. Stacy wasn't just stealing photos, she was stealing someone else's identity, living through the screen as if it was her own life. It felt surreal and deeply unsettling. Someone out there was taking someone else's memories, their moments, and pretending they were hers. I couldn't understand why anyone would do that. Was it loneliness? Jealousy? A desperate need to escape her own reality by hiding behind the perfect mask of another girl's life? Whatever it wasn't harmless. It felt like a kind of erasure, like Stacy was losing herself by trying to be someone else. I started paying closer attention. The more I watched, the more I noticed how perfectly she mimicked my friend's mannerisms and interests online. The way she talked about music, the places she said she loved to visit, even the slang and phrases, everything was copied down to the smallest detail. It was like she was rehearsing, trying to become the perfect version of someone else. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know who Stacy really was. I arranged to meet her in person. When I finally saw her, it felt like looking at a ghost. She looked nothing like the pictures online. Not just a little different, but completely off. The person I met had the same hair color, sure, but her face was softer. The eyes lacked that spark the photos showed, and her smile felt forced, like she was trying to remember which face to wear that day. It was like meeting someone wearing a skin that wasn't theirs, and that was unsettling. Talking to her face to face, the whole thing felt wrong. I brought up the photos and the stories she told online, gently at first, hoping she'd be honest. But she was quiet, evasive, and when pressed, she never owned up to the fact that those pictures were stolen or that the stories were copied. Instead, she changed the subject or gave vague, awkward answers. It was like she was stuck in this cycle of pretending, and once she got caught, she had no way out. That encounter stuck with me. Stacy wasn't just lying online. She was living a fabricated life so completely that when she was faced with reality, she seemed lost, like a person who'd built a house of cards, and now everything was collapsing around her. It wasn't just deception, it was something deeper and more tragic. I kept wondering why someone would do that. What pushes a person to lie through someone else's identity, borrowing memories and stories as if their own don't matter? Was it shame? Fear? Or maybe she simply didn't have a life she was proud of, so she took what felt better, more interesting, from someone she knew. This wasn't just an act of borrowing. It was like she was erasing herself, and in doing so, pulling everyone around her into a fake world. The whole thing stayed with me like a shadow. Every time I thought about Stacy, I felt a strange mix of pity and discomfort. Talking to her felt like talking to a stranger wearing someone else's skin. It wasn't just a typical catfish story. It was something way more disturbing because it wasn't just about lies or pretending online. It was about someone losing themselves so deeply in someone else's life that when you met them, it felt like meeting a ghost with someone else's face. It made me realize how fragile identity can be in the digital age. Behind every profile is a real person, or at least there should be. But sometimes those profiles are masks hiding loneliness, fear, or desperation. Stacy's story isn't just about stolen pictures or fake stories. It's a reminder that sometimes people disappear behind the very screens they use to connect, hiding from the world and from themselves. After everything, I couldn't help but feel a little sad for Stacy. Not just angry or betrayed, but genuinely sad. Somewhere in there, behind the stolen photos and the fake stories, was someone who just wanted to be seen to belong. But instead of living her own truth, she got trapped in someone else's. That's the weird thing about identity online. It can be so fluid and fragile, shaped by who we want to be or who we think others want us to be. Stacy's story taught me to be cautious but also compassionate. Because sometimes the masks people wear aren't just for show. They're a way to survive in a world that feels too hard to face without one. You ever get that weird gut feeling when something just doesn't add up, but you ignore it anyway because it's easier to believe what you want to? That's exactly how it started with Derek. At first, everything seemed kind of perfect. He was funny in a way that felt natural, smart without being showy, and his pictures looked real enough, not like those filtered, staged profiles you scroll past all the time. We talked every day, shared memes, debated our favorite shows, and just chatted about random stuff like you would with someone you genuinely enjoyed. It felt effortless, like this easy connection, and I was hooked on it. But there was always this strange thing. Derek never really talked about his daily life. I'd ask about his job or his friends, stuff you'd expect when you're trying to get to know someone. But Derek would dodge the questions, change the subject, or just say something vague, and then steer the conversation back to safer ground. At first, I thought maybe he was private or maybe he just didn't want to overshare online. I mean, people keep some parts of their lives to themselves, right? So I didn't push it. Maybe I liked the mystery more than I wanted to admit. But as the weeks went on, it started to feel off. The more I talked to Derek, the less I actually knew about his real life. I realized I knew less about him than about some random acquaintances I barely talked to. No work stories, no weekend plans, nothing about anyone he actually hung out with in person. Just this online persona that was always there but never really connected to anything outside the screen. One day, I decided to try and get a clearer picture of who he was. I casually asked about his job again, hoping for something more concrete. Instead, Derek got weird, almost defensive. It was like the moment I mentioned it, something shifted. He threw out some vague excuse about freelancing or working on projects, but gave no details, no names, no clear schedule. It felt like I was supposed to accept this mysterious job without question. And honestly, it frustrated me. Why wouldn't he just be upfront? Questions about friends brought the same vague answers. He talked about some people or old friends, but nothing solid. When I asked about meeting them or hearing stories, he brushed it off. There was always an excuse or a quick change of subject. By this point, I was pretty sure Derek wasn't living the normal life he claimed. How do you have zero friends or a non-existent job, yet be online all the time, acting like everything's fine? It didn't add up. I started piecing things together, looking for inconsistencies. There were moments when Derek mentioned places he supposedly visited, but the photos he shared looked like stock images or were obviously pulled from random websites. Stories he told started sounding rehearsed, like he was repeating the same lines, but changing little details to make them sound new. Every time I tried to dig deeper, it felt like I was hitting a wall. Then I decided to try meeting up with him. Maybe it was naive, but I wanted to see if Derek was real or just someone hiding behind a screen. I suggested a casual public place, something low-key, easy to get to. At first, Derek agreed, seemed genuinely excited, but as the day approached, the excuses started. First, his car broke down. Then, a family emergency. Then something about a work project he couldn't miss. The excuses piled up until finally he just disappeared. No warning, no explanation, just gone. After a few days of silence, suspicion set in. I searched for Derek on other social media platforms, messaged the number he'd given me. Nothing. No trace beyond the original account where we'd been talking. It was like he never existed outside that little corner of the internet. That's when I realized the truth. Derek wasn't just avoiding meeting because of bad timing. He didn't actually have a life outside the internet. No job, no friends, no real social circle. Just this carefully constructed persona living mostly online. It hit me hard. How someone could build an entire world just through texts and photos. How easy it was to create a character that felt real until you tried to scratch beneath the surface. The worst part wasn't just the lies. It was how completely fake the whole thing was, like I was talking to a ghost. Derek wasn't a person. He was a character. A story spun to keep me interested. Meeting him. Forget it. The moment I mentioned it, he vanished. What stuck with me most was how easy it was to get sucked into someone else's digital fantasy. I kept wondering if anyone else had been caught in the same loop, or if Derek was just someone who lived behind screens with no intention of ever stepping into the real world. It felt like talking to a shadow, someone who felt real but never existed where it mattered. Sometimes I think about why someone would do this. What drives a person to live a fake life online? Maybe Derek was lonely or scared of rejection, or just too lost to live a real one. Or maybe it was simpler than that. The internet lets us be whoever we want, and Derek chose to be someone who wasn't him. But the cost was huge, not just for me, but for himself. Because living a lie like that means never really connecting, never being truly seen, and always risking disappearing when reality comes knocking. Looking back, I'm glad I learned the truth, even if it hurt. It was a harsh reminder that not everything online is what it seems, and sometimes the person you think you know is just a ghost behind a screen. Derek's story stuck with me. A cautionary tale about how easy it is to lose track of what's real in a world where anyone can be anyone. And maybe, just maybe, a reminder to trust that weird gut feeling, even if it's easier to ignore. I met Katie online, and at first, she seemed exactly like my type. Confident, chill, the kind of person who made you feel like everything was easy, no drama, just good vibes. Her pictures weren't those overly staged or airbrushed selfies that flood social media. Instead, she looked real, like someone who wasn't obsessed with showing every inch of herself just to impress strangers. That kind of authenticity instantly pulled me in. Our conversations were light and fun. We talked about music, movies, random nonsense, and she was always down to joke around or keep things casual. Nothing felt forced or awkward, which was rare, especially with online dating. We finally decided to meet up in person. I was excited, but also a little nervous. There's always that tiny worry that someone won't look like their photos. But I thought, everyone angles their pictures, everyone edits a bit. So I wasn't expecting perfection. Still, when I actually saw Katie, it hit me harder than I expected. She had gained a lot more weight than her photo suggested. Not just a little difference. It was like meeting someone almost unrecognizable compared to the pictures I'd been talking to for weeks. I wasn't sure what to say or how to react without coming off as shallow or rude. So I tried my best to act normal and be cool about it. But Katie noticed the hesitation in my face and the shift in my energy immediately. That easygoing, confident vibe she had online disappeared in a flash. Instead, she got defensive, even angry, accusing me of being shallow for even noticing her weight. She flipped the script and made it sound like I was the one with the problem, not her. I felt completely stuck. I didn't want to be the jerk who judged someone on their appearance, but it was impossible not to notice. The vibe between us shifted quickly from relaxed and casual to tense and uncomfortable in a matter of minutes. After that first meeting, the dynamic changed completely. Katie started using my reaction like a weapon. It was like she had set a trap and now she was holding me hostage with guilt. She made me feel terrible for caring about something that she insisted shouldn't matter. She talked about how hard it was for her, how she was working on it, and that I was the only person who stuck around when others wouldn't. Suddenly, staying in the relationship wasn't about liking her or feeling connected anymore. It was about not being the bad guy who abandoned someone who promised to change if I just gave her a chance. I kept telling myself it was just a rough patch. Maybe Katie really was trying, and this was part of the process. But the guilt trips only got heavier, and the emotional pressure got worse. Every little thing I said or did that wasn't supportive enough was twisted into proof that I didn't care or that I was shallow at heart. The weight issue stopped being about looks. It became this emotional control tool she wielded to manipulate me. I felt trapped in a cycle where any honest feeling I had, even feelings of frustration or confusion, were turned around and thrown back at me, making me feel like the bad guy. The worst part was how subtle it all started. Nobody else would see this happening because it didn't look like the classic signs of emotional manipulation. It wasn't shouting matches or dramatic fights. Instead, it was little comments here and there, tiny digs and side remarks that made me question myself more and more. How quickly something that should have been no big deal became the center of everything, poisoning the whole relationship. What began as a casual meetup with someone I liked turned into this exhausting emotional trap, where I was constantly walking on eggshells, trying not to upset Katie or trigger the guilt machine. Over time, I realized I didn't even recognize the person I had been talking to online anymore. The confident, chill Katie who had seemed so easygoing and fun was gone, replaced by someone who twisted my kindness and patience into chains. Meeting her wasn't just disappointing because of the photos. It was scary how quickly the relationship spiraled into a mess where a small thing like weight became a weapon. The person I thought I knew turned out to be someone who used vulnerability as a way to control and manipulate. In the end, I walked away feeling more drained than anything else. It wasn't about weight or looks anymore. It was about how someone could take something so simple and turn it into a tool to mess with your head until you don't even trust your own feelings anymore. That's what stuck with me the most. The way it all started casual, light, and easy, but then slowly twisted into this dark, controlling dynamic that no one really saw coming. Looking back, I can see how it started with small moments, her defensiveness, the guilt trips, the way she turned things around on me, but I didn't catch it at the time. I wanted to believe in the easy connection we had, and that made me ignore the red flags. I wanted to give Katie a chance, even when things felt off. But now I realize how dangerous it is when someone uses emotional manipulation disguised as vulnerability or personal struggles. It's not just unfair, it's toxic. That whole experience taught me a lot about boundaries, of being honest with yourself, and about how important it is to notice those gut feelings early on. It's easy to dismiss weird feelings or brush off small warning signs, especially when you really want to believe in someone. But the truth is, those feelings are usually trying to tell you something, and ignoring them can lead you into a place where you lose sight of what you deserve and what's healthy. Katie's story wasn't just about a relationship gone wrong. It was a lesson about how emotional control can hide behind kindness and vulnerability, how people can use guilt and insecurities as tools to keep others trapped. It left me more aware, more cautious, and more determined not to fall into the same kind of trap again. And maybe that's the hardest part, knowing how easy it is to get pulled in by someone who seems real and kind at first, but who slowly uses your own empathy against you. I don't regret meeting Katie, but I'll never forget how something so casual and hopeful can turn into a web of manipulation. It's a reminder that sometimes the people who seem the most chill online might be fighting battles you don't see. Or worse, they might be using those battles to control you, and that's a lesson worth remembering. I met Alice online, and honestly, for months, she felt like everything I'd been waiting for. It wasn't one of those casual, forgettable connections that fade after a few messages. No, this was different. It was one of those rare moments where you just get a vibe that clicks instantly. Our conversations flowed so naturally, like we'd known each other forever. We had the same taste in music, shared similar jokes, and even had those weird little quirks that somehow matched perfectly. We swapped stories about our lives, exchanged photos, and shared playlists. It wasn't just surface level small talk like so many online chats tend to be. With Alice, it felt real. I could honestly imagine spending time with her in person. When she mentioned she lived in our city, it made perfect sense why we had so much in common. It felt like fate or some kind of cosmic coincidence. I remember thinking, finally, someone who gets me, who's actually close enough that this could really work. But then little things started to bother me, details that didn't quite add up. Her schedule was strangely inconsistent. She couldn't seem to name local places she said she'd been to a dozen times. Sometimes she claimed she was free on certain days, and then completely contradict herself the next time we talked. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she was just busy or distracted. Maybe it was the usual online dating weirdness, but the doubts kept creeping in. I figured I'd ask her straight up where exactly she lived. Nothing too invasive, just casual curiosity. That's when things got strange. Instead of answering directly, she said she was in the middle of moving, that her life was in transition. It made sense as an excuse for the inconsistencies. I thought, okay, maybe the moving is messing with her routine, her headspace, all that. But the excuses kept piling up. The timeline of her move didn't make sense. One day she'd say she was moving next week. The next day it was next month. And sometimes she couldn't even say where she was moving to exactly. What really raised red flags was how she wasn't posting anything local on social media. No check-ins, no photos of places around the city, no stories that would link her to where she said she lived. It was like her online presence existed in a vacuum, disconnected from any real place. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, so I did something I probably shouldn't have. I started digging a little deeper. I ran some of her photos through reversed image searches, expecting to maybe find some stock images or the usual fake profile stuff. But what I found was way worse. None of those pictures were hers. Not a single one. They belonged to a real girl from a totally different city. A girl I was able to find pretty quickly just by running those images through a search engine. Suddenly, the whole thing clicked. Alice wasn't Alice at all. She was living someone else's life online, using that girl's photos, interests, and even details from her real life to build a convincing persona. I kept digging, hoping maybe it was a hacked account or some kind of weird mix-up. But no, this was deliberate. The fake Alice had stolen this real girl's identity to construct a whole new profile, one designed to fool people like me. Every story, every photo, every late-night conversation. It was all a lie built on top of another lie. I felt like I was caught in a nightmare where the person I thought I knew wasn't just hiding behind a screen, but was someone else entirely, pretending to be a version of like that wasn't theirs. Then came the next shock. I messaged the real girl from the photos. She was completely blindsided. She had no idea someone was out there using her pictures and personal details to deceive people. Apparently, this catfish had been running the same scam with multiple others, creating fake profiles with her identity and fooling people into thinking they were talking to the real person. The whole thing was way deeper than I ever imagined. Someone out there was erasing their own identity and living through someone else's online life for months, maybe years. I tried confronting the fake Alice one last time, hoping to get some answers, some honesty. But she disappeared. No messages, no explanations, just silence. It felt like the whole thing was a ghost story, like she never really existed at all. I was left with a mess of questions and this gnawing feeling of betrayal and confusion. Why would someone do that? What did they really want? It wasn't just about stolen pictures or lies. It was about how easily someone could pretend to be real, to build an entire life that wasn't theirs, and how many people could get caught up in that trap without even realizing it. What freaked me out the most wasn't just the deception. It was knowing that someone was out there living a double life, messing with people's trust like it was nothing. The entire time I thought I was getting close to someone, I was really just talking to a shadow, a copy, a perfect fake. It made me question everything about online connections and how well we can ever really know someone through a screen. Now, months later, I'm still trying to make sense of it all. I wonder if there are others out there stuck in the same story, wondering if this catfish is still out there spinning her web. I think about how easy it is to get fooled by someone who seems genuine and kind. And honestly, I hope I'm never fooled like that again. It's a reminder that not everyone you meet online is who they say they are, and sometimes the truth can be more unsettling than anything you imagined. I've learned to be more cautious now, to listen to those little gut feelings when something feels off. Because in this digital age where so much of our lives happen through screens, the line between real and fake is blurrier than ever, and sometimes the person you think you're talking to might not even exist. I met Liam on this dating app that I usually scroll past without a second thought. You know the kind, the profiles blurred together, the same filtered selfies and generic bios. But his was different. There was something about his smile in those pictures, something that felt genuine, and the way he talked about music and old movies was exactly my vibe. It wasn't just surface level stuff. It was like he was describing things I loved without trying to impress. We started chatting, and honestly, it didn't take long for me to think he was genuinely different from the usual guys I'd meet online. Liam was charming in a way that felt real, not forced or rehearsed. We talked every day, sometimes late into the night, and for the first time in a while, I was actually excited about someone. At first, everything seemed pretty normal. Liam shared stories about his life. Nothing flashy, mostly struggles that made him feel real. Job troubles, bills piling up, family stuff weighing on him. He was always upfront about being short on cash, but it didn't bother me much. I figured everyone hits rough patches sometimes, and being honest about it felt like a sign of trust. He never asked for money outright in the beginning, but as days went by, he started dropping little hints. Mentions about his car breaking down, or how he needed to pay a late rent fee. The way he talked about it made it sound like he was embarrassed but had no choice. I wanted to help because it felt like he was being vulnerable, but I was also cautious, trying not to get too involved too quickly. Then things got a little weird. One day, Liam asked if he could borrow my card just in case, or if I could send a bit of money to help cover some bills. I said no. Something inside me didn't feel right. I had boundaries and I wasn't about to let those slip just because he was in a tough spot. I wanted to believe in his honesty, but I also didn't want to be used. That's when the shift happened. Suddenly, Liam went cold. The sweet, attentive texts slowed down and eventually stopped altogether. When he did reply, his messages felt off, sharp, bitter, almost accusing. It was like he expected me to owe him something just because I had spent time talking to him or trusted him enough to listen to his problems. The tone changed so quickly I barely recognized it. I started getting confusing texts about loyalty and how much time I had wasted on him. It felt like the whole dynamic flipped overnight from something hopeful and warm to something tense and suffocating. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was stressed out or going through a rough day. But the way he talked started feeling manipulative. Liam would twist things around to make me feel guilty for not helping him. He'd make me question if I was really a bad person for saying no to his requests. I remember thinking, is it just drama, or is this something worse? Because it didn't feel like normal relationship tension anymore. It was a game where I was the target. And then it got darker. The threats were never direct, but the implications were clear enough. He'd say things like, people like you never last, or hint that he knew things about me that maybe I didn't want him to know, which was terrifying because I hadn't actually shared much personal info with him. Somehow people always seemed to have a ready answer, as if he was watching me or had dug deeper than I realized. It made me paranoid and anxious, second-guessing every word I'd said. The worst part was how fast it escalated. One day, Liam was a guy I thought I could trust, open, honest, even vulnerable. The next, he was someone I didn't recognize at all, cold, angry, and controlling. It was like I was caught in a trap, trying to keep things calm and normal while he pulled me deeper into his twisted world. And all because I didn't give him what he wanted: money, loyalty, control. It was never really about the cash. It was about power. I realized then that Liam wasn't just asking for help. He was testing me, trying to see how far I'd go before he flipped the script. His charm was just a mask, a tool to reel people in and manipulate them when the time was right. Behind the sweet words and shared playlists was someone who used people to get what he wanted, no matter the cost. After a while, I stopped responding altogether. Liam didn't take it well. The messages got worse, more aggressive, more threatening, and sometimes downright scary. I blocked him, but the damage was already done. I felt drained, confused, and shaken. The guy I thought I was getting to know was just a version of himself he wanted me to see, not who he really was. Now, every time I think about Liam, it's like remembering someone I never actually met. The charm, the stories, the promises, they were all part of the game, and I was just a player who got caught up in it. It's not just about being catfished by a fake profile or stolen photos. It's about realizing that someone can build a whole identity just to pull you in, only to use your kindness against you. That kind of betrayal messes with you more than you expect. You wonder how someone can switch from sweet to scary so fast, and how easy it is to be fooled when you really want to believe. Liam wasn't just a catfish. He was a reminder that sometimes the people who seem closest are the ones who can hurt you the most. You ever meet someone online who feels like exactly what you needed? Like they get you in ways nobody else does? And that's how it was with Chili. At first, everything was easy and cool. We'd message every day, share stupid memes, talk about music and movies, all that usual stuff that somehow felt fresh. Chili seemed real, funny, but chill, like someone you could just kick back with. No pressure, no drama, just vibes. I wasn't expecting much, but I found myself looking forward to our talks, which was weird because I don't usually get that into people I meet online. We'd spend hours just chatting about random things. It wasn't one of those conversations where you have to force the flow. It was effortless, like talking to someone who just gets you without needing to explain. Chili had this way of making even the dumbest jokes land perfectly, and I felt like I was finally finding someone who wasn't pretending. I shared parts of myself I don't usually reveal so quickly because, honestly, I felt safe. It was refreshing after all the usual awkward, surface level conversations you get online. Then, out of nowhere, Chili vanished. No warning, no goodbye, just radio silence. One day we were talking, the next nothing. I waited. Days turned into weeks. I kept checking my phone, hoping for some kind of message, a sign that everything was okay, but nothing came. No explanation, no sorry I've been busy, no hint at what happened. Just gone. I felt confused, but figured maybe life just got in the way. People disappear sometimes, right? Maybe something real had happened, and I didn't want to assume the worst. But it bugged me more than I thought it would. I kept replaying our last conversations, trying to find clues I missed. Was I too clingy? Did I say something wrong? Or worse, was it just all a lie from the start? I told myself to move on, Deleted the app a few times, but every time I found myself opening it again, hoping Chili would come back. And then, just when I was about to give up entirely, Chili popped back, but it wasn't quite Chili anymore. The name was different, the photos totally new, but the voice, the way they message, was the same. I could tell immediately. It was like seeing someone put on a different mask, but failing to hide the eyes underneath. There was no mistaking the tone, the jokes, the rhythm of the words. It was the same person, or at least the same mind behind the screen. But why come back with a different face and story? That question haunted me. The new Chili acted like nothing happened. They told a different story about where they'd been, why they disappeared, and what was going on in their life now. The photos were polished, like from a different person entirely, but their words had that same rhythm, those little jokes and phrases only Chili would use. It didn't add up. The story was too neat, too rehearsed. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So I started digging. I reverse searched the photos, checked out the new profiles, and compared everything to the old Chili. The pictures weren't just new. They were stolen, edited, and recycled from different places on the internet. None of them belonged to this person. The stories. They sounded like scripts, recycled with small tweaks to fit different people and different situations. It hit me like a brick. Chili wasn't just costing me and coming back. They were running the same act on multiple people, cycling through fake lives, fake personalities, just to keep everyone hooked. It felt like I was trapped in some weird loop, stuck trying to figure out who was behind all these faces and lies. How many people had they done this to? Were some of them waiting for the same Chili to come back? Were others already crushed or worse, totally broken? The thought was like a dark cloud hanging over me. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was this whole network of people being fooled and left in the same mess. It made me feel small and powerless, like I was just one victim in a game much bigger than I could understand. At first, I wanted to call them out, blow the whole thing open. I wanted to expose the lies, warn others, and maybe get some answers. But what was the point? They'd just vanish again, change their name, photos, stories, and start fresh somewhere else. It was like chasing a ghost in an endless maze. And even if I could expose them, would anyone else believe me or care? Online lies happen all the time. People get burned, move on, or just delete the app and pretend it never happened. But this felt different. It wasn't just some one-time catfish trick. It was a pattern, a carefully built cycle designed to reel people in over and over, like they didn't care who got hurt or how many times they had to break someone's trust to keep their game going. It was calculated and cold, like a script they followed to perfection. And I couldn't help but feel like a fool for getting caught up in it. After a while, I stopped messaging the new Chili, but I never deleted the chats. I kept them there, staring at the screen like proof that someone had been pretending to be everything I thought I wanted, but was never real. I'd catch myself scrolling through old messages and wondering if they were talking to others right then, spinning the same story, making someone else believe in the same fake person I once did. It was a haunting thought, knowing there were probably dozens, maybe hundreds of people caught in the same web, waiting for a ghost to show up again. It messes with your head, knowing someone you trusted was just a mask, a performance that meant nothing except whatever they got from playing it. You start questioning what's real and what's just a story someone told because it was easier to lie than face the truth. You wonder if any of the moments you shared were ever genuine or if it was all just part of the act. I still don't know who Chili really was or why they picked me, but I do know one thing. This kind of catfishing isn't just about fooling someone for a day or two. It's a never-ending cycle, a twisted game where people get replaced like characters in a show that never ends. And all you can do is sit back and wonder who's next, and hope you're not one of them. It started out kinda innocent. I met Tracy online through some app, nothing special at first. We matched and started chatting like usual, nothing extraordinary, just the usual small talk that slowly drifted into deeper conversations. What caught my attention was how she seemed to know little things about me that I never mentioned to anyone. Stuff that wasn't exactly public knowledge or something I casually share. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, or maybe she was just really good at guessing. Like when she mentioned that weird tattoo I got on a dare in high school, something I only ever told my closest friends, and the little coffee shop I used to go to when I was stressed out during college. I didn't tell her about those things, but she said it like she had been there, seen it with her own eyes. It felt a little cute, honestly, like she was paying attention to details most people wouldn't even notice. I told myself maybe she just paid close attention, that she was someone who listened carefully, but deep down, it felt strange. How could she know all that without me ever sharing it? I chalked it up to a lucky guess at first. Maybe it was one of those rare moments where someone reads you so well they just seem to know your story. I wanted to believe it was harmless, that she was just genuinely interested in me. But then it got weird fast. The next time we talked, she started dropping names of my old friends, people I haven't spoken to in years. She knew which ones I was close to and who I'd fallen out with. It wasn't just vague mentions either. She'd bring up inside jokes those friends and I shared or details from events I hadn't thought about in ages. Then she knew things about my family, like private stuff that never got talked about outside my house. I didn't share that with anyone online. She somehow knew. I kept asking myself if I was just imagining it or if she was reading too much into casual mentions, but it wasn't like that. It was too specific to be coincidence. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like she wasn't just someone interested in me. She was watching. Not just observing from a distance, but watching closely. She knew things no stranger should ever know unless they had been there, lurking in the background. I felt the chill run down my spine every time she brought up something personal that only a handful of people knew. When I finally asked her how she knew all this, she didn't try to make excuses. Instead, she straight up told me she had been following me everywhere online with fake accounts. Not just following, but watching, checking in on every post, every comment, every tagged photo. She said she created dozens of profiles, pretending to be different people just so she could keep tabs on me from all angles. She'd read everything from my old tweets to the private groups I was in. I wasn't sure if I should be creeped out or impressed by how much effort she put into it. I told myself maybe she just wanted to get to know me better, but deep down, it was terrifying. It was one thing to have someone show interest, but this was obsession. It felt like a slow invasion of my privacy, a creeping realization that she was there in the background, quietly building a web around me. I asked her why, and she said it was because she cared. That she didn't want to lose me. But caring didn't look like stalking. It didn't look like pretending to be dozens of different people just to keep tabs on every move I made. Things got worse when I wanted to meet her. I thought if I saw her in person, maybe all this weirdness would make sense, or maybe she was just lonely and obsessive, but harmless. Instead, it became a nightmare. She showed up without warning at my apartment. Not a call, not a message, just appeared like she'd been living inside my phone and knew when I was home. At first, I thought maybe it was a coincidence, or maybe she just randomly seen me while out, but then it happened again and again. She would know when I was out with friends or family where I liked to go, even when I went for a run in the park. Once, she was waiting outside a cafe I went to for lunch, sitting there like it was the most normal thing in the world. I never invited her, never told her my schedule, but she always seemed to be one step ahead, like she'd hacked my life. It was like she was living in my shadow, moving through my days without me ever realizing. Trying to get away from it didn't help. I changed my social accounts, made everything private, deleted old posts, but she just created new fake profiles or found other ways to watch. It was like she wasn't just watching me online anymore. She was watching me in real life. I felt trapped in my own world, like I was being hunted by someone who refused to let go. One night, she showed up at my door at 2 a.m. No warning. Just there. She wasn't angry or threatening, just calm. Like she belonged there. Her eyes didn't flicker with guilt or fear. She looked almost satisfied. That's when I realized this wasn't about anything normal like dating or friendship anymore. She wanted control. She wanted me to know she was always there, always watching. Like she wanted to own every part of my world. I told her to leave. I begged her to stop, but she just smiled softly and said, "I'm not going anywhere." The words echoed in my mind long after she left that night. It was like a dark promise hanging over me. I started looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. I checked every room in my apartment before I felt safe to sit down. I stopped trusting my own phone, always wondering if she was lurking somewhere in the background, waiting to strike. I still don't know how she did it. How she knew everything, how she got so close without me realizing until it was too late. How many fake profiles she'd spun to weave this invisible web around me. All I know is that the person I met online turned out to be someone living in my shadows. And now every time I check my phone or step outside, I wonder if she's there, watching, waiting like a ghost that never leaves. It's not some crazy thriller story, it's real life. And it's still happening. The person I thought was just a stranger on the internet became a presence in my daily life. A constant reminder that sometimes the people you meet online aren't who they say they are, and sometimes they don't stop once you say goodbye. I remember the exact moment I first saw Harry's profile. It was one of those days when I wasn't really searching for anything serious, just casually scrolling through the app, killing time between errands, maybe hoping to stumble on something interesting or just distract myself. His pictures, though, caught me off guard. They looked like they belonged in some indie magazine or a trendy travel blog. There was this effortless coolness about him, a confident guy who looked like he'd spend his weekends hiking through forests or playing an obscure instrument nobody's heard of. You know, that type of guy who would then chill at a local cafe, sipping a latte, talking about life, art, or the meaning of it all like a seasoned philosopher. And his stories, they backed up that vibe perfectly. He talked about crazy travel adventures, had a creative job working with design or photography, and was into all these interesting hobbies that made him sound like the kind of person who actually lived a full, authentic life. I stopped scrolling and thought, yeah, maybe this one's different. We started talking almost immediately, and honestly, it felt good. Like, really good. He wasn't just tossing out cliches or playing small talk games. He seemed to genuinely get me, and I found myself digging the way he described his life. Everything about him felt polished, but also somehow real. His messages were full of warmth and wit. I could almost picture what me and him would be like, hanging out, sharing stories, maybe hitting up a bar or wandering through an art gallery. It was easy to imagine that kind of connection, something meaningful and exciting. Then came the day we agreed to meet. I was nervous and excited, not gonna lie. I got myself ready, told a few friends about it, and headed to the cozy little cafe we'd chosen. When I got there, I saw him waiting outside. And instantly, something felt off. He looked nothing like the guy in his pictures. For starters, he was much smaller and way less put together than I expected. No casual confidence, no effortless cool. Instead, he seemed awkward, shifting his weight from foot to foot, avoiding eye contact like he was uncomfortable being in the spotlight. It was almost like he was someone else entirely. At first, I tried to shake off the feeling. Maybe the photos were old or heavily edited. People do that all the time online, right? Or maybe he was just nervous too, and that was why he seemed so different. But as we sat down and started talking, more things didn't line up. His stories about his job sounded vague and uncertain, like he was fumbling to explain something he wasn't even sure about himself. When I asked about his friends or what he liked to do on weekends, he got weirdly defensive, like I was accusing him of lying or hiding something. It was strange, unsettling even. That's when my curiosity shifted to suspicion. I started digging because the internet never forgets, and if you look hard enough, you usually find something. What I found was disappointing. He wasn't who he said he was. His job? Totally fabricated. The cool group of friends he talked about. Just some random people he met on an old gaming forum. Not the tight-knit crew he made it sound like. And the age he claimed. He said he was in his mid-20s, but public records showed he was almost 10 years older. That was a lot to take in. I confronted him gently at first, trying to give him a chance to explain. But instead of openness, I got defensiveness and excuses. Suddenly, he painted himself as the victim of misunderstanding. He told me people didn't get him, that he was misunderstood, and to try to keep up with life in whatever way he could. Talking to him felt exhausting, like I was trying to hold a conversation with someone who was constantly slipping away from the truth. What hit me hardest wasn't just the lies themselves, but how easily he spun this entire persona out of thin air. The Harry I've been talking to wasn't just a stretch of the truth or a little white lie. It was an entirely different character, carefully crafted and maintained. It was like he created this perfect mask that he could put on whenever he needed to, but it was so tight that it left no room for the real person underneath. I kept wondering why he needed to do all this. Why couldn't he just be himself? Was the real him so broken or scared that hiding behind a fake online persona felt safer? Or was it something deeper, like he didn't even know who he really was anymore? The whole thing felt less like deception and more like a kind of self-imposed prison. In the end, I walked away feeling drained and kind of messed up. It was like I'd been talking to a stranger who somehow knew a lot about me, but never showed me who they really were. The whole experience was a wake-up call about how easy it is for people to build entire fake worlds online, and how sometimes the person behind those worlds isn't just pretending. They're lost inside the illusion they created. There are no big lessons or neat endings here. Just a story about a guy who looked amazing online but was a completely different person in real life, and how I got caught up in the illusion for a minute too long. It made me realize that behind the polished photos and charming words, there can be something much more complicated, sometimes lonely, sometimes desperate, that we don't see until it's too late. And maybe that's the hardest part of all. I'll be real, I never thought I'd get caught up in something like this. You know how it is with dating apps. Everyone's got their angles, their filters, and their little tricks. I met Polly online, and honestly, at first, it was like finding a needle in a haystack. Their photos were flawless, like every shot was taken at the perfect angle with just the right filter to hide anything they didn't want you to see. They always talked about how chill and confident they were, which I've bought for a while. I mean, who wouldn't want to believe that? For months, Polly was exactly the kind of person you'd hope to meet online. The texts were easy, the jokes landed, and they had this vibe that felt cool without trying too hard. But something always felt a little off. Like, no matter how many photos they sent or stories they shared, I never felt like I really knew them. It was all just surface. The big moment came when we finally decided to meet. I was nervous, excited, and honestly, a little curious. I thought maybe all the filtered pics were just them playing it safe online, but meeting face to face would be different. It wasn't what I expected. When Polly showed up, the first thing I noticed was that they looked way different than the pictures. Not just a little different, much heavier than any of their photos suggested. The angles and filters had done their job so well that it was almost like meeting someone else entirely. At first, it was awkward, like trying to pretend you're cool when you weren't expecting this at all. I felt bad for even thinking about it because I wanted to be chill, like Polly said they were. I tried to act normal, but inside I was thrown off. Polly noticed, and that's when things started to get weird. Instead of just brushing it off or changing the subject, Polly started watching my reactions like a hawk. Every glance, every subtle hesitation, every micro expression became this big deal. They called me shallow for even noticing, and said I was judging them unfairly. I felt myself getting pulled into this uncomfortable place where I wasn't allowed to feel anything other than admiration or support. It wasn't just that, they started flipping the script on me. Whenever I said something even close to what I was thinking, they twisted into some kind of guilt trip. Like suddenly I was a bad guy for expecting honesty, for having preferences, for not being perfect myself. It was like I was trapped in this loop where every feeling I had got spun into some kind of emotional trap. I kept trying to pull away, thinking maybe this was just some weird phase, but Polly kept tightening the hold. They'd send long messages about how hard it was living in a world obsessed with looks, how they just wanted to be accepted for who they were, and how I was the only person who made them feel safe. I believed it, even while my gut screamed that something was off. What made it worse was how quickly things escalated. Polly didn't want me talking to other people, even online. They'd get jealous over random comments I left or people liking my posts. At first, it was cute in a clingy way, but then it got controlling. I stopped posting certain things, I stopped replying to some friends just to avoid conflict. And all while, I was stuck trying to convince myself I was being understanding, that I was being a good person for sticking around. But deep down, I felt like I was losing myself. Like Polly had taken this huge part of my life and slowly squeezed the air out of it without me noticing. One night, after one of those long back and forth fights about my shallow reactions, I finally looked back at all our old chats and pictures. I noticed patterns, how every time I complimented Polly, it was about the filtered photos, not the real person. How they carefully avoided sending new pictures without those same angles or filters. I realized they were not just hiding their weight, they were hiding who they really were behind a mask, and they used that mask to pull me into this twisted dance. It hit me hard. Polly wasn't just insecure or shy. They were controlling me, guilt-tripping me, making me question my own feelings and boundaries so I'd stay stuck. It wasn't about me accepting them anymore. It was about them controlling what I thought and felt. I tried to talk to them about it, tried to set boundaries, but it just turned into another guilt fest where I was the villain. Eventually, I stopped replying altogether. Now looking back, I realized how subtle it all was. The filtered photos, the vague stories, the constant guilt trips disguised as vulnerability. It wasn't about us connecting, it was about control. I don't even think Polly knew how far it went. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. Either way, it left me with this weird mess of emotions I'm still sorting through. So yeah, that's my story about Polly, the person who hid behind perfect angles and filters, only to trap me in this cycle of guilt and control. No neat ending, no big lesson. Just a reminder that sometimes what looks perfect online can be the exact opposite in real life. And honestly, I'm just glad I got out before it got worse. I thought I was dating Lily for about 6 months. When I say dating, I mean we talked every day, shared stories, had those late night conversations where it felt like the world shrank down to just the two of us. She was charming, genuinely sweet, or so it seemed. She made me feel like I mattered, like I was the center of her universe. She remembered the smallest details I mentioned in passing, sent me songs that she thought I'd like, even little digital drawings she made on her tablet. It was this kind of vibe that makes you think, maybe this is real, maybe this is something special. But honestly, right from the beginning, something felt off. Lily never posted anything about me on social media. No photos together, no tagged posts, no stories mentioning me, not even a hint. At first, I shrugged it off, thinking maybe she was just private or didn't like mixing her online life with her personal relationships. I wanted to believe that privacy didn't mean secrecy, but now looking back, that should have been the first red flag. Then there were the video calls, or rather the lack of them. Every time I brought up wanting to see her face, she'd have an excuse ready. My camera's not working, she'd say, or the lighting's terrible today. Sometimes it was I'm too tired, or I'm busy with family stuff. The excuses piled up. We never met in person either, which in itself wasn't uncommon for online relationships, especially at the start. But after months of talking every day, the fact that she avoided any face-to-face, even virtually, started to gnaw at me. I wanted to believe it was just nerves or anxiety. Maybe she was shy or scared. I didn't want to push too hard, hoping she'd open up eventually. But she never did. As time went on, the excuses became more elaborate: work emergencies, sick relatives, surprise trips. One time she said her phone got stolen and she had to borrow friends for a week. Each time I pushed for a video call or asked about meeting up, something would come up to block it. I kept being patient, telling myself that if she cared, she'd find a way. Maybe she really was juggling a lot or dealing with complicated stuff. Still, the nagging feeling stayed. I started noticing her online presence was unusually minimal. She had social media accounts, sure, but they were strange. Pictures of her solo concerts or hiking in the mountains, but no friends, no tags, no check-ins. No photos from birthdays, no group shots, no casual hangouts. When I asked about her friends or family, she gave vague answers, dodging specifics. I was curious. One night, curiosity mixed with doubt got the better of me. I decided to do some digging. I reverse searched some of her pictures, checked public profiles, scrolled through comments on her posts. Then I found it. There was another profile. The same girl, same face, same tattoos, but under a different name. This profile was much more active. There were pictures of her with another guy, smiling, holding hands, casual couple stuff that screamed real relationship. I stared at it, my heart sinking. All those times she said she was alone or busy or traveling solo were lies. She had another life, another relationship, one I wasn't part of. So I kept scrolling through that account, reading posts and comments. There were mentions of a boyfriend, plans they made together, photos that matched places she told me she was visiting alone. It was like watching a secret world unfold, a life she'd carefully hidden from me. That's when it hit me hard. I wasn't her main relationship. I was her side thing. The backup. The secret she kept running online when things were dull or complicated with the other guy. I was the invisible safety net, the emotional placeholder she could pull out when she wanted attention or validation. I felt sick. Looking back at all our chats, rereading her messages, every little "I miss you" or "can't wait to see you" felt like a lie. She wasn't dodging me because she was scared or shy. She was protecting a real life I was never meant to be part of. The late night talks, the heartfelt confessions, they were just distractions. She used me to feel important, to have someone waiting on the other side of the screen, but she didn't care enough to be real with me. I was an emotional convenience. It's a terrible feeling being someone's secret, like you're living in the shadows of someone else's life, never truly seen or known. And what stings the most is how good she was at pretending. She was so convincing that I missed every single sign, ignored every red flag because I wanted to believe in us. I wanted it to be real. After that, I stopped replying. No angry texts, no confrontations, just silence. I couldn't look at her anymore, but I also didn't want to get dragged into whatever complicated mess she was living. I blocked that other account too, trying to erase the evidence of the double life she was living. I don't know if she ever blocked me back or if she just disappeared from my world. Honestly, I don't care anymore. What I do feel is this weird emptiness where trust used to be. It's a strange kind of heartbreak, Not the kind that comes from a messy breakup or a bad fight, but the kind that sneaks in when you realize you were never really part of the story. When the person you thought you were dating was just running parallel lives, and you were never the main character. No dramatic reveal, no big moral to this story. Just the ghost of someone I thought was real, and the harsh truth that sometimes people online are living lives you'll never be part of. And that maybe is the scariest kind of fake. I didn't think I'd ever get caught up in something like this. I mean, I've heard of people getting scammed online before, but it always seemed so obvious, red flags everywhere, right? But Ollie was different. They never asked for money straight up. Instead, they did this weird, slow burn thing where they just drop little hints, like breadcrumbs, hoping you follow. It started on this chat app where I wasn't really looking for anything serious, just messing around. Ollie's profile was simple, scruffy hair, always wearing a hoodie, a cigarette hanging out of the corner of their mouth in most pics. It didn't say much at first, just casual talk about music and random dumb stuff that felt normal enough. I liked that it wasn't super intense right away. Then, after a couple weeks, the first hint showed up. Ollie mentioned their car broke down in passing. Not like, hey, can you lend me money? But just this casual complaint like anyone might do when venting. They said something about being stuck waiting for a tow truck and how it was messing up their week. I felt bad. Next came the ramen. Ollie said they'd been eating instant noodles every day because bills were stacking up. Again, not a direct ask, but it hit me in the gut. Like, this person was struggling and trying to stay afloat. I thought about them while I was ordering dinner one night, realized how lucky I was not to have to worry about that. I started checking in on them more often, not because I was looking for something, but because they were real about it. Honest in a way most people online weren't. I mean, yeah, they still made jokes and sent goofy pictures of their cat, but under it all, you could tell things were tight. Then they mentioned eviction, just casually, like it was another annoying thing on their list. I remember the message. It wasn't even dramatic, just, my landlord's been on my case about rent. I didn't even think twice before offering some help. I sent a little cash through the app. Not a lot. Just enough for a tank of gas or a few meals. That's when it started to spiral. Every few days, Ollie would drop another hint. New problem, same story. Water got shut off. Phone bill overdue. They had to work extra shifts, but still couldn't make ends meet. I didn't want to leave them hanging, so I kept sending what I could. It felt like the least I could do for someone who was being so open about their mess. But here's the thing. Ollie never asked for it. Never once said, can you send me money? They just waited, let you fill in the blanks, made you feel like the hero for offering. After a while, the amounts got bigger. I justified it to myself by telling myself it was temporary. I kept thinking that if I could just help them get through this rough patch, things would settle down. We even made plans to meet once Ollie said they were finally sorting out the rent. But then they coasted. No warning, no explanation, just gone. I was confused, hurt, but I figured maybe they were dealing with more stuff or embarrassed to face me. So I waited. Then one day I saw a post on a forum. Someone talking about their own valley story. The same car trouble, same ramen diet, same eviction line. I laughed at first, thinking it was a coincidence, but the details were too exact. The way Ollie described their cat, the little jokes about bad coffee at work, the weird phrase they always used for stress, it was all the same. Then I found another post, then another. Different people, same story. Dozens of them. Each talking about Ollie, how they'd been helping, how they'd gotten ghosted, how they kept waiting for a real meetup that never happened. It hit me like a punch in the gut. Ollie wasn't just scamming me. They were running this emotional Ponzi scheme. Moving from one person to the next, collecting small amounts from everyone, keeping just enough hope alive to keep people invested. I wasn't special. I was one of many. I went back through our old chats, trying to piece it together. Some messages were copy-pasted, some repeated little phrases. Ollie kept stories vague but familiar enough to feel real. They knew exactly when to drop the right hint to get me to offer help. It was all calculated. I don't know if they had a real life or if Ollie was just a made-up identity designed to string people along. Maybe there's a whole team behind it. Or maybe it's just one person who's figured out how to survive off other people's kindness without ever having to meet them. I never got closure. No explanation, no apology, just silence. My messages went unread and eventually deleted. The profile disappeared. I stopped answering calls from unknown numbers. changed my passwords, tried to convince myself I was just unlucky. But sometimes when my phone buzzes late at night with a message from a random number, I wonder if it's them. If they're still out there, dropping the same tired lines for someone new. I guess that's the weirdest part. Knowing someone's using your empathy like a paycheck and moving on to the next person the moment you stop paying. And the worst, realizing you weren't helping anyone. You were just part of the cycle. I met Delia on one of those dating apps I only downloaded as a joke. My friend had dared me to go on one date a month, and I figured swiping through people while waiting for the bus wasn't the worst way to pass time. Most profiles felt like carbon copies, filtered selfies, gym mirror pics, captions quoting TV shows. But hers stood out. She didn't try too hard. A few soft, casual photos and a short bio that said something like, "Too emotional for my own good, but I make really good pancakes." It felt oddly honest, or at least different. We started messaging and it clicked fast. She had this dry, sad kind of humor, like every joke came with a sigh at the end. The kind of funny that feels like a coping mechanism, which I guess is my type. We had the same taste in old movies, could quote the same songs from high school playlists, and she'd share memories like climbing onto the roof as a kid to watch planes take off. Weirdly specific stuff. All the little details that made her seem real in this oddly poetic, broken way. Then came the first tragedy. She told me her dog had died. She sent this blurry picture of a golden mutt curled up on a floral blanket. Said she'd had him since she was 10. She apologized for being quiet for a few days. Said she didn't mean to ghost me. She just hadn't wanted to talk to anyone. I told her it was okay. I felt bad for her. She seemed like the kind of person who would really take something like that hard. A couple weeks later, we were back to talking regularly. Then came the next blow. Her grandma had passed away. It was sudden, she said. Heart failure. They'd been close. She told me her grandma was the only person who ever really got her. She texted me a photo of a lit candle next to a photo frame and said she was going to be off her phone for a while. Again, I told her to take all the time she needed. What else could I say? After that, things started to blur. We talk almost every day. Funny texts. Half-serious late-night conversations. But every time we got close to actually meeting, something would go wrong. One day she said her car broke down on the way to the coffee shop. Another time she'd gotten food poisoning from bad takeout. The closest we came was when she texted that she was on the bus heading toward my side of town. I was excited and nervous. Then 30 minutes later, she said her coworker had called emergency shift. She had to turn back. There was always just enough chaos to keep me from pressing. I told myself she wasn't avoiding me. Life was just happening to her. It would be cold to get frustrated at someone who just lost family or a pet or a job. And yes, then she got laid off too. Said her manager was out to get her. She sent a stream of angry texts about it, mentioned she was already 2 months behind on rent and couldn't sleep. I sent her some money through Venmo. Not much. Just enough for groceries or gas, I told myself. Looking back, I think that's where I messed up. That's when she knew I'd stay. After that, the tragedies came faster. Her roommate stole from her. Her phone cracked. Her cousin went missing for 2 days. Then she said she had a panic attack and ended up in the ER. There was always something terrible enough to make me feel like I'd be a monster if I walked away. And the weird thing is, I didn't even really like her anymore. I'd lost that initial spark. But I felt responsible, like I was in too deep to leave, like she was a mess I'd agreed to help carry. Then one night I was scrolling Reddit, aimlessly flipping through relationship threads, and I stumbled across one titled, "Does anyone know this girl?" It had a photo, a blurry screenshot of a dating profile. It was her. Same red hair, same thrift store headphones, same half smile that looked like she didn't quite want to be in the photo. The post explained how this guy had been talking to her for 2 months and was starting to feel like something was off. She kept canceling meetups. Every week there was a new tragedy. Dog, grandma job, word for word. My stomach dropped. There were replies, dozens. People chiming in with, "Wait, are we talking about Delia?" And then sharing their own versions of the same script. Same names, same stories. Some of them had sent her money too. Not huge amounts, but enough to sting. I felt sick, not just because I'd been played, but because she knew exactly what she was doing. She didn't try to seduce me. She didn't send racy photos or promise anything she couldn't deliver. She just made me feel bad for her. She turned herself into a walking emergency, someone too fragile to question, too broken to doubt. I didn't message her again. I didn't confront her. I didn't block her either. I just stopped. Let the messages sit there, unopened. She sent one more after I went silent. Something short. Hey, I hope you're okay. Just wanted to say thanks for being there. And then nothing. She's probably still doing it. New apps, new profiles, new names, recycling the same grief like it's a script. Finding people who are just empathetic enough to get hooked and just polite enough to never push too hard. People who were raised to say, let me know if you need anything, and mean it. I deleted the app, changed my Venmo name, locked down my socials, but I still think about her sometimes. Not because I miss her. I don't, not even a little. It's more of a quiet, unsettled feeling like I wandered into someone else's game and didn't realize it until it was already over. And the worst part is, I think that was the game. It was never about love. It wasn't about connection. It was about control. Sympathy on demand, over and over again. Like it was a job. And I was just another shift. It's kind of embarrassing to say this out loud, but the first time I saw Adam's profile, I hesitated because something about him looked weirdly familiar. Like, not a full-blown, I know this person kind of familiar, just something off. Like when a face in a dream follows you around all day and you can't figure out why. But he was cute, normal seeming, and his bio wasn't cringy. Said he liked photography, matcha, and watching horror movies alone at night. We matched. Our first convo was kind of instant, like zero effort. He had the same dry humor I liked. We joked about dumb movie tropes for like an hour, and it just felt easy. He sent selfies, voice messages, random pictures of his cat. Normal online dating stuff. But then I started noticing the resemblance. The photos were edited, but not in a weird filter way. It was super subtle, just small things. The lighting always seemed soft, like early morning. His jawline had this overly smooth look. The angles he chose, they reminded me of someone. It took me a few days to figure it out, but once I did, I couldn't unsee it. It looked like my ex. Not completely, but like close enough to make it feel deliberate. Same hair texture, same dimple on the left cheek. Even the way he wore his hoodies slightly zipped up with a t-shirt underneath. It was too close. I asked him about it one night. I was joking kind of, but not really. Just said he reminded me of someone I used to know. He said people tell him that all the time, and it was probably just a coincidence. I tried to believe that. Then came the phrases. Things that were so specific, they threw me off. He once said, don't get lost in your own head. There's not enough parking, which is something my ex used to say to me every time I got anxious. Word for word, my ex made that joke up. I remember the day he said it. I remember laughing and writing it in my notes app because it was oddly comforting. A few days later, Adam said half of people are just mirrors, the other half are fog. Another one. Another exact line. My ex used to tweet it like a motto. I'd never heard anyone else say that before. And then there were the little things. Adam knew I hated the sound of clanking silverware. Like, not just that's annoying, but full-on sensory overload stuff. I'd never mentioned that to him. Not online, not in our chats. But one day, he sends a voice note while he's out eating and literally says, don't worry, no cutlery sounds, I remembered. He remembered something I never told him. That's when I started scrolling. I went back through my ex old profiles, the ones I hadn't looked at since we broke up. Some of them were gone, some just inactive, but I still found old captions, tweets, pictures. A lot of what Adam was saying. Phrase almost the same. Same little jokes. Same references to books we used to talk about. It was like Adam was remixing my old relationship and feeding it back to me. I didn't sleep much that week. But I didn't block him. I should have maybe, but I wanted to know. I needed proof that I wasn't losing it. That it wasn't just coincidence or grief tricking my brain. Then he sent a selfie. Normal at first glance. Just him, hoodie on, laying down. But something in the background caught my eye. The wall. There was this poster. A poster I helped hang up. In my ex's bedroom. It was an old film print with a weird tear in the bottom corner and a black pushpin dead center at the top. I stared at it forever. Then I saw the lamp in the corner, the curtain, the bookshelf with the exact same leaning stack of books. It wasn't similar. It was exact. He was in my ex apartment. I didn't respond. Didn't ask questions. I just sat there with my phone in my lap, my mouth open like I had been punched. It didn't make sense. My ex had moved cities after we broke up. We hadn't talked in over a year. He wasn't the type to make burner accounts or get involved in games like this. And Adam? I had no clue who he really was. I scrolled all the way back through our texts, looking for anything I missed. His Instagram was gone by the next morning. Twitter locked. Number disconnected. Just gone. But the scariest part wasn't him disappearing. It was how good he was at it. He knew how to edit his face just enough. He knew my ex's speech patterns, the inside jokes, the stories. He'd studied, like actually studied. Somehow he got inside my head, figured out my type, and sculpted himself into it. I still don't know how he found my ex's apartment, or if they knew each other, or if he was my ex using some fake account for reasons I don't even want to think about. Sometimes I still think about that selfie. The expression on his face, it wasn't even trying to smile. It was blank, like he knew I'd noticed the background, like that was the point. I deleted everything, got off dating apps. I locked down all my old posts, scrubbed what I could, but I still get random follows sometimes. Empty accounts, no profile picture, just watching. And every once in a while, someone will comment on a really old post of mine. Something dumb I forgot I even wrote. Just one word. Coincidence. I don't respond. I just block. But I save the usernames. I have a note on my phone with all of them, just in case. It started with a reply to a meme I posted. Something dumb about cereal and sad music. This girl, Ariana, commented and said it was like I stole her exact morning routine. We started talking from there. It was chill at first, just funny comments, random DMs, mostly jokes. She had this kind of dry humor that matched mine exactly. It didn't feel forced. Everything just clicked. Then it kept going. We talk every day, not constantly, but enough. Enough to feel like I was checking in with someone who got me. She knew the exact bands I liked, like deep cuts, not just top Spotify stuff. She quoted lines from movies I hadn't talked about in years. She sent me memes that hit exactly the stuff I joke about. Favorite snacks, favorite weather, favorite movie scenes that made her cry, and they just happened to be the same ones that got to me. At first, I thought I was just lucky. You don't meet people who feel that aligned very often. She said she found me through a mutual follower, someone who went to my school years ago. We weren't super close, but I didn't think much of it. People online find each other through weird paths. We talked about a lot. Family stuff, panic attacks, long nights where we both couldn't sleep. She told me things that sounded so specific. This one story about sitting in her car during a thunderstorm listening to this obscure song I had on an old playlist. I didn't even remember ever posting about that. I just thought it was one of those weird cosmic coincidences. But over time, it started to feel too tailored. Like she always had the perfect answer. Like she was made in a lab to be my type. Every opinion she gave lined up with mine. Not just stuff like I like chocolate over vanilla. Deeper stuff. Opinions about friendships. How she handles anxiety. What she does when she can't sleep. It was always what I would say, or what I had said, now that I think about it. One night I was bored and scrolling through my old tweets. Just random stuff. I went deep, like 2019 level. And I found this post. There's something about the song Slow Burn by Casey Musgraves that makes me feel like I'm 16 again, but in a weird nostalgic hurt way. A week before that scroll session, Ariana had said almost the same thing in a voice message. Same song, same feeling, different words, but barely. That was the first red flag. So I started checking more. I searched phrases she'd used, exact ones, and found a bunch of them in old Instagram captions. Mine. Stuff I'd written years ago and forgotten about. She once told me about how she used to eat apples with cinnamon as a kid. I remembered I'd posted a photo of that exact thing back in like 2020 with a long caption about how it reminded me of my grandma. Same photo angle. Same story. She told me her favorite comfort movie was Where the Wild Things Are, which I had posted about during a breakup phase, saying it was my go-to sad film. She had even quoted a line from it that I used in a comment thread back then. I started to realize she had built herself around me. Around everything I'd ever posted said it shared. Years worth of random info. It was like she combed through every version of me that had ever existed online and pulled pieces from all of them to make this perfect, fake person. The creepiest part, I never noticed. She didn't mirror me like a parrot. She mixed it all up just enough to make it feel natural. She never said anything that sounded copied. It was always just eerily accurate, like she already knew how I'd react before I even said anything. I went into full paranoia mode, started digging. I reverse searched her profile pictures, nothing. I tried using usernames across different platforms, all dead ends. I looked up the name she gave me. A few people with that name, but none that looked like her. None who lived where she said she lived. Then I remembered I'd made a Spotify playlist called For No One in Particular back in 2021. It was all songs that made me feel like I was in love with someone I hadn't met yet. I hadn't shared it publicly. It wasn't even under my real name, but I linked it once in a story forever ago. She referenced songs from that playlist, ones that weren't on any of my other lists, obscure emotional tracks that I hadn't talked about anywhere else. She said one reminded her of me, but she never heard it until I posted it. That's when I got it. She'd gone through everything. My tweets, my tagged posts, my friends' comments, playlists, Ivy stories from 3 years ago, even Tumblr reblogs from high school, stuff I barely remembered, all of it. She made herself out of my past. Every trauma she shared with me was a slightly edited version of something I had posted during a low point. She twisted it just enough to feel relatable, not obvious. I'd fallen in love with a mirror. I blocked her, reported the account, deleted a bunch of old stuff, but I never got answers. A few months later, a new account followed me. No profile pic, no posts. The username was just my middle name spelled backwards. The bio said, "Still love your taste in music." I didn't follow back. I didn't message. But I checked that playlist. It had one new like, just one. No name attached. I deleted it that night, and I haven't made another since. I met Tim online during one of those nights where everything felt kind of pointless. It was late, I couldn't sleep, and I was just scrolling through this art forum I used to hang out on. He messaged me after I posted a sketch of a moth I'd drawn, said he liked the style, asked if I did commissions. That's how it started. Casual, friendly, nothing weird. Over time, we started messaging more, then every day. He always had something interesting to say. Music I'd never heard of, random facts about bugs and abandoned buildings, old books with pages missing. He was funny, a little strange in a way that made him seem smarter, and I liked how he talked. He never flirted, never made it weird. It was just comfortable, safe, even. After a few months, we moved to texting. He said he lived a couple towns over, not far. His pictures were mostly blurry, kind of low res, but nothing suspicious. Just badly lit selfies, some with his cat. He had this brown jacket he wore in most of them, with a patch on the sleeve that looked hand-sewn. I remember thinking it looked like something out of a thrift store. We planned to meet up after maybe 6 months of talking. I would usually do stuff like that, but I figured since we'd been texting every day and FaceTiming, though weirdly, he always kept the camera kind of pointed at his mouth or off to the side. It was safe, but the first time he said his car broke down. Sent a picture of the tire off the rim. Fine, stuff happens. Second time, he said there was a family emergency. Something about his brother getting into a motorcycle accident. It was believable. He sent a voice note that time, and he sounded actually upset. His voice was low, kind of tired, and I felt bad for doubting it. By the third time, when he canceled saying he had a fever and couldn't even get out of bed, I started to feel weird. Like, what were the odds? And it wasn't just the cancellations. I started noticing little inconsistencies. Once he said he lived near the old mill, but then later he told me his apartment was walking distance from downtown, which didn't line up. Another time I asked about his job, and he said he worked overnight shifts at a hospital. A week later, he mentioned an early morning meeting at his office. Office? What happened to the hospital? It wasn't adding up, and it wasn't just confusion. It felt off. Like I was talking to someone who was trying too hard to seem normal, but didn't have all the pieces lined up. I Googled his phone number. Nothing came up. Reverse image searched his pictures. No hits. I even asked around online, on the forum where we met, if anyone else had talked to a guy with his username. No one replied. Then one night I couldn't sleep again, and I went digging. I remember the patch on his jacket from the photos. It looked like a moth stitched in black thread. I started searching random stuff. Moth patches, custom embroidery, even tried descriptions like brown jacket with moth patch. Eventually, deep in some image results, I found a photo on an old Instagram account. Different person, different name, but same jacket, same patch. The account belonged to a guy named Lucas. The post stopped 2 years ago. The last one was a picture of a candlelit window. The caption just said, "Goodbye." I Googled his name. That's when I found the obituary. Lucas had died in a car accident almost exactly 2 years ago. Same age as Tim. Same town Tim claimed to be from. Same Dan face in the photo from the article. It wasn't blurry this time. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to make it make sense. I felt sick. I texted Tim. I didn't say what I found, just asked if he was awake. He replied right away. Said he'd been thinking about me. Said he wished we finally met in person. I didn't reply. I just sat there staring at his message while my heart was pounding. I kept going back to the obituary like maybe I read it wrong. But I didn't. Lucas was dead. Had been for 2 years, and whoever I'd been talking to had taken his identity. Used his pictures, even copied his cat's name. It was all stolen. But why? That was the part that stuck with me. I kept going over every conversation we had. Every photo, every voice note. Trying to hear something I missed. I wanted there to be a sign, something obvious I'd overlooked, but there wasn't. I blocked the number, deleted the messages, but it didn't stop there. A few days later, I had a letter in the mail, no return address. Inside it was a printed photo. It was me sitting at the bus stop near my house, headphones and sketchbook on my lap. I hadn't even noticed anyone taking it. On the back, in tiny handwriting, it said, "You look different in person." I moved in with my cousin the next day. Told my parents I needed a break from everything. I didn't explain. I changed my number, made all my accounts private, deleted the ones I didn't use. But sometimes, even now, I'll get a weird follow request from an account with no posts, or a message from a new number that just says something random like "still drawing," and I'll reply. I don't open them anymore. Sometimes I still wonder who it was, if it was someone I knew, if they picked me at random, if they were doing it to other people too. But most of the time I try not to think about it. I don't go on forums anymore. I don't post my art publicly. I haven't drawn a mouth since.